at an incredible time, I think a historic time. I've been a journalist now for over 20 years, a print journalist. I started off as, and then a broadcast journalist and reporter. And I've covered 6 presidential elections. I do think that the 2020 presidential election is the most consequential presidential election of our lifetime. We are potentially facing a constitutional crisis as Democrats in Congress debate potential impeachment against Trump. We have a world order that is in chaos, with forces seeking to disrupt democracies, including our American democracy. And as I take on this role as anchor and managing editor of the CBS Evening News, I'm humbled by it. And I also think about Walter Cronkite, who held that position for 20 years. And in reading his biography and some of the notable things that he said, journalism is what we need to make democracy work. We need an informed electorate in order to make the right choices. We need trusted voices in media. We need independent sources in media, not false news, but real news.
As we know, there is a lot of polarization right now in this country, and we see from a media landscape. Is this the new normal? Is that type of objectivity, when you mentioned Walter Cronkite, gone?
No, I don't think that objectivity is gone. I think there's just a very large media landscape. And if you are seeking affirmation rather than information, there's a place for you to go. There are cable channels that are catering to your political views. And there is a complex media financial conglomerate that is profiting off of that. And that's okay. You can have that in a democracy. And that's okay. But what we at the broadcast networks, and particularly I think at CBS, is provide information, not affirmation.
One of the things that we talked about is that out of tumult can come positive change. And we're also coming off the heels of a very tumultuous few years with the Me Too movement and what's ahead. And you said you believe that the 21st century is a century where women in power now will have the opportunity to unleash their voices and have access to opportunity like never before, but barriers still remain in place. When you look at the landscape today, particularly given your unique vantage point, how do you see it?
Well, we went through our own Me Too experience at CBS, as did some other organizations. And Gayle King and I were on the air, and I said, women cannot achieve equality in the workplace until there is a reckoning and a taking of responsibility. And I think that reckoning has taken place. And that new day is no longer on the horizon, as Oprah said. That new day is now here. It has come. And that's a really incredible thing to watch that as a journalist and just as a woman, to see what is happening, actually, I think, in a pretty short period of time. Things are changing, and that's why, as I've said to Moira, I firmly believe that the 21st century is going to be the century of women. We are in the midst of this incredible moment. I mean, I'm giving myself chills because I think we plateaued for such a long time, and there was such a conversation that Sheryl Sandberg started about leaning in. Are we leaning in enough, and where have we come? And I just finally feel we are on the precipice of just great change.
Something that you and I talked about is we're seeing more women in leadership positions. You talk about the incredible work at CBS, but you, over the past 2 years, have become the center of the story. Many of the stories in the news, you talked about the Me Too movement and everything that happened at CBS. Also, what was really striking was the conversation around your appointment to this position. Obviously, Gayle taking on a greater role at CBS Morning News, you in this new role. And that conversation was portrayed in the media as what people called an epic feud. And this is the type of lens that time and time again, we see stories about two women in the news and beyond playing out that can be really pervasive, toxic. And how did you experience that, given your relationship to Gayle and also your relationship to the industry?
It's interesting that in the period of change, that there were some who profited off a story, essentially suggesting that there was some beef between Gayle and I. And Gayle said, we're not even going to justify that, and we will have the last word. And Oprah called me too, and Oprah said, you will not rise without challenge. And I thought that was just such an important lesson, and it applies to all of us. You will not rise without challenge. You will not rise without someone trying to take you down, say you're not qualified enough for that role, that you haven't been in the field long enough to take this exalted position. Don't listen to them.